Some truths are so powerful that they can't be understood in their time. They disrupt the fabric of everything we know, unsettling us, making us question our existence and our place in the world. To carry such a truth is a burden, heavy, isolating, and often painful. Yet this burden is the birthplace of some of humanity's most profound creations, inventions, and philosophies. It is the truth that so many of us reject, until perhaps it is too late to recognize the genius it carries. Consider the life of Franz Kafka, a writer whose name today is synonymous with the absurdity of existence, the weight of alienation, and the quiet horror of a world that refuses to make sense. Kafka lived in relative obscurity, his works unpublished during his lifetime, and he died with his books largely ignored, gathering dust in the shadows of history. The Trial, The Metamorphosis, and other works that now seem almost prophetic in their exploration of the human condition were dismissed, rejected, and buried. Kafka's truth was an uncomfortable one, too complex, too unnerving for his time. His world, much like ours, was full of noise, of distractions, of comforting illusions. His truth shattered those illusions. But Kafka was left with only his words, his agonizing solitude, and his unfulfilled desire for recognition. Kafka, like many others who came before him, lived alone with his truth, rejected by a society that did not have the capacity to see what he saw. And yet, after his death, his work began to speak with the same urgency that had driven him to write. Today, his name is known across the world, his books are considered pillars of modern literature, and his truth continues to challenge us. But Kafka never lived to see that transformation. He carried his truth alone, misunderstood and unappreciated. He gave everything, only to leave this world without the validation his genius deserved. Then there's Vincent van Gogh, whose paintings were barely noticed during his lifetime. His brushstrokes, his colors, his bold vision, they were too raw, too emotional, too different. Van Gogh lived a life filled with suffering, mental illness, and financial hardship. The world around him did not understand his truth. His paintings, filled with passion and a deeper connection to the world, were not seen as the work of a genius. They were seen as madness. He only sold one painting in his lifetime, and that too to a fellow artist. The rest of the world ignored him. He was isolated, ignored by the very society that would later call him one of the greatest artists to ever live. Van Gogh found solace only in his work. He poured his pain, his fear, and his longing into every brushstroke, and yet, as he did so, he was rejected by the world. He was not recognized in his time, and the relationships he tried to maintain crumbled as he followed his own path, one that could not be understood by those around him. Van Gogh died alone, a failure in the eyes of the world, but his paintings, which could only have been born from the depths of his suffering, now command millions. The truth he carried alone lives on, immortalized in every masterpiece he left behind. Nikola Tesla, too, lived with a truth that no one could comprehend. A man ahead of his time, Tesla's inventions and ideas would change the world, but not in his lifetime. He created the foundations of modern electricity, wireless communication, and even envisioned a world powered by renewable energy long before it was possible. Yet Tesla was ignored, rejected, even ridiculed by the scientific community. His genius was simply too far ahead of its time. While others, like Edison, were celebrated and immortalized, Tesla struggled to even secure funding for his projects. He died alone, penniless, and largely forgotten by the very people who had the ability to change the course of history. Tesla's truth, his vision of a world powered by electricity, free of the constraints of wires, was rejected by the world, but it lived on in his inventions, in the technology we use every day, in the light we take for granted. Tesla's brilliance, his vision, was not recognized in his time, but after his death, it became the cornerstone of the modern world. Consider also the life of Mark Twain, the sharp-witted American writer who spent his days observing the injustices, absurdities, and hypocrisies of society. Twain was not a stranger to hardship or rejection. He faced financial difficulties, personal losses, and criticism for his work. He wrestled with the truth he saw in the world. Yet Twain's work, his satirical insights into the heart of human nature, became timeless. His truth, though rejected by many during his lifetime, shaped the very course of American literature and culture. His biting humor, his critique of society, and his understanding of human nature were all grounded in an uncomfortable truth. A truth that, like those before him, Twain carried alone, even when it seemed the world refused to listen. These stories are not just about artists, writers, or inventors. They are the stories of anyone who has ever dared to pursue a truth that no one else understands. The truth that burns in the heart of someone who feels the weight of the world's expectations, but still pushes forward, regardless of the cost. It is the truth of the soul that refuses to be silenced, even when society, culture, and relationships turn their backs on it. It is the truth of finding your path, no matter how lonely, no matter how misunderstood, no matter how much rejection you face. And this is where it gets difficult. Because truth, the deep, uncomfortable, raw truth of who we are, what we want, what we believe, is not always welcomed. In fact, it is often met with silence, with ridicule, or worse, with outright rejection. When you discover your own truth, your passion, your purpose, your calling, you may find yourself alone. The very people who should stand by you, your family, your friends, your society, may not understand your path. They may not be able to see the world as you see it. They may even try to pull you back, to make you conform, to fit into a mold that is not yours. And in those moments, you must ask yourself, what do you do with your truth when no one else will stand with you? It is easy to look at the lives of figures like Kafka, Van Gogh, Tesla, and Twain and admire their genius from a distance. It is easy to celebrate their works as if they came with no cost, no pain, no isolation. But the truth is, they suffered. They suffered because their truths were too big for the world, too uncomfortable, too unfamiliar. Their truths were too real, and that is why they were rejected. That is why they were left to carry their vision alone, to suffer in silence, while the world went on, indifferent to their genius. But in their suffering, in their isolation, they found something greater. They found the strength to keep going. They found the resilience to create. They found the courage to hold on to their truth, even when no one else would. Today, we look back at their lives with admiration, but we forget the pain they endured. We forget that their truth was not celebrated in their time. We forget that they carried their genius alone without the recognition or love they deserved. And in doing so, we miss the most important lesson. Their greatness was born from their suffering. It was born from their unwillingness to abandon their truth no matter how much the world turned its back on them. They did not give up. They did not surrender to the voices that told them to conform. They did not compromise their vision, even when it seemed that the world would never understand them. The truth they carried alone became their legacy, their gift to the world. Their work, which was once rejected, is now revered. Their truths, once too painful to bear, are now the very things that shape our understanding of the world. And while they may never have lived to see it, their genius lives on. Their truth continues to inspire, to challenge, to transform. The world that rejected them has now embraced them, but that acceptance came too late for them. So to you, the person carrying your truth, the person walking alone, the person whose genius is still misunderstood, know this. You are not alone. Your truth may be uncomfortable. It may be painful. It may cause you to lose relationships, to face rejection, to feel as if you are carrying the weight of the world. But your truth is yours to carry. And like those who came before you, it will one day find its place in the world. It will one day be recognized for the power, the beauty, the genius that it is. You are not defined by the world's rejection of you. You are defined by your truth, and by the strength it takes to live in alignment with it. Just as Kafka, Van Gogh, Tesla, and Twain carried their truth alone, so too must you carry yours. And when the world is finally ready to hear it, your truth will speak with the same power that it has always had, timeless, profound, and immortal.